We're in the midst of a huge transformation where our peers, communities, and workplaces are all really melding into one. Welcome to Reimagining Company Culture. My name is Christina Giordano, she, her, and hers, and I am the Senior Partnerships Manager here at AllVoices. Today, I am very excited to welcome our next guest on the interview series, Missy Waggoner. She is the Chief People Officer at Apptio. Missy, nice to see you. If you want to share a little bit about yourself for folks who are listening, including your pronouns, and when you were younger, do you remember how exactly to answer the question when people asked, what do you want to be when you grow up?
Yeah, thanks, Christina, for having me. So Missy Waggoner, she, her. And when I was younger, I wanted to be a doctor. That's all I ever wanted to do. And that obviously didn't work out. I went to college to do it. And for a lot of different reasons, I changed into a marketing major. And now I'm here in HR, which was purely accidental. I needed a job, and my dad said, become a nun, join the army, or get a job. You decide what you want to do. And I sort of fell into recruiting, and that's sort of grown my HR career.
I love it. I always think it's interesting to reflect back to see kind of where we thought we would be 10, 20 years down the line. Fast forward to today, you're in HR, you're the Chief People Officer, Chief People Leader at Apptio. When you think about this dynamic thing of company culture, we know it's always changing, especially as new folks are joining an organization too. It's intentionally kind of maintained. What are qualitative and quantitative ways you think about measuring company culture?
Yeah, and it's fascinating because the word culture means something different to so many different people. It's sort of like work-life balance. Like, what does that actually mean? It means something different. But I think for here at Apptio, we have our values, we live our values, and that is really what drives our culture. For us, we try to mirror, we have quantitative ways to determine whether or not we're doing a good job and keeping people engaged. We do surveys, and we have an engagement survey, and we have the data. We do exit interviews and all those things. But I think the data is what points us in the direction. And it's the rolling up our sleeves and getting into the conversations with the employees that really tell us. It's the feedback in these focus groups that help us drive what our strategy is. It tells us, are we actually living our values? We've done a lot of conversations with employees on, what do you think about our values? Do they resonate with you? Do we live those every day? How does that manifest itself in everything that we do? And so I think, again, the data tells me it's sort of an arrow in a direction of go research, but it's those conversations with the employees and with the leaders that really tell us, are we driving the right culture? And are we driving the culture that we say we have, right? So I think that's really important, is to really hear the voices of the employees.
Absolutely. Setting up that environment where people feel like they can give that feedback. They know the values. There's alignment between values, actions that are celebrated as well. And then when you have that feedback, making those insight-driven decisions and things of that nature too. And I think we've seen a lot of folks really take that feedback, and because of the past few years, nobody had a crystal ball. Folks are really innovating, testing new strategies, pivoting in every sense of the word, and innovating, especially with employee engagement, people, culture, and the diversity space. Can you tell us about something that you initiated or tested, and if you were surprised by the end result?
Yeah, and maybe clarify, are you specifically talking about the diversity space, or are you just talking about how we drove culture in kind of a crazy time that's been thrown at us over the last few years?
Yeah, more so kind of how you drove culture over the past few years, and how you've innovated in kind of the people, culture, and diversity space.
Yeah, it sure has been a challenging time for us. And there was no handbook, there's no playbook. And Apptio we were actually already a fairly hybrid company. We had 40% of our employees that were working out of their homes, and we didn't do hybrid well. We were very much a butts and seats, talk about the office type. We weren't super inclusive. And so we had to pivot, just like everybody had to pivot, to a fully remote environment. And so we spent a lot of time, we had a very infant strategy around communication and engagement. And 2020 was going to be a big year for us to do a bunch of things that we had to kind of reevaluate. So we had to say, okay, what are the mechanisms? What are the tools how do we engage people when there isn't an opportunity to stop by somebody's office? And so I think the things that we did are really about open communication. I mean, we got our executive team in front of the company every week. We were doing the Ask ELT sessions, and we still carry that through today, even though we are making our way back into the offices more. We did fun things, and fun things we were going to do together, we started doing over Zoom. And I would say the thing that surprised me the most about, all of the engagement and the doubling down on communication is our employees that were remote felt more included and more a part of the company than they ever had before we had to go in a remote setting. And all of a sudden, the people that had been with the company forever, working out of their homes, are like, I feel like an Apptian in a way that I never did. And so that was such a great outcome of a really, really challenging time. And it's the thing that's top of mind for me is how do we not lose that as we start going back into offices and having people where half the people are on Zoom calls and half of the people are sitting in a conference room, right? And how do we keep that feeling of inclusivity and that feeling of that Apptian spirit as we continue through our journey?
Absolutely. I know a lot of organizations were kind of in that mentality too, around butts and seats, or just like coming in and collaborating in the office together. And I think in a hybrid environment where you have folks who are remote and coming in person, you have to really think about kind of how you're engaging folks and what the company culture is to a further extent as well. You have a mix of folks coming in too. How have you thought about redefining employee engagement specifically in that hybrid environment and what that looks like?
Yeah. So first of all, it forced us to actually have an employee engagement strategy. Mm-hmm. Again, I think we did some things, but we had to think about it in a more strategic way. And so we put a strategy, a people strategy in place for the first time since I'd been at Apptio. And we spent a lot of time hearing from employees on like, what is the mechanism to engage them? Because again, we're all different. Some people love Slack and some people love email and some people don't want engagement at all. And then engagement also looks differently if you're in India or if you're in EMEA, which has 12 different countries and, they're isolated, or in the US. And so I think, again, it's not groundbreaking, what we were doing, but we were listening to employees, we were hearing their voices, we were thinking about how we do things at a global level, but also how we could do things at a local level, right? And so we were thinking about it globally, but acting locally. What matters in our India culture is very different than what matters in the US. And so we took some things and celebrated some things at a global level, but we also did some really kind of fun engagement things, for the different regions that we had. And we spent a lot of time we have a couple programs. We have Apptio Fun and Apptio Cares and Apptio Belong. And Apptio Fun was really around, how do we just have fun? We did an Apptio Olympics when the Olympics got canceled, and we did a pass the torch across the country. It was all on Slack, and people took pictures of their torch that they made with their kids or their dogs or whatever, and we passed it from place to place to place, and we had it on Slack. It was super fun. Like, that's not something that we would have thought about, prior to sort of forcing us to rethink how we thought about engagement. So that's just a little snippet of some of the fun things that we did. And then how do you give back to the community when there's nothing happening in person? So we had to think about, how do we do some things that would allow us to kind of promote our Apptio Cares hours that we give people. And so we gave ideas. We did a small business Slack channel where people could put in their small businesses of their friends and their relatives or things that they know, so that Apptians can go and buy from small businesses during challenging times. Those are just some of the things that we did.
Yeah, I think those are really good kind of examples as well to think about, and not a one size fits all approach too. And to your point, thinking about a global strategy, a local strategy in terms of location, and then going back to what you said earlier too, in terms of having those core values, the company values as a North Star kind of to guide everybody and align them there as well. We know that a lot of folks have been experiencing burnout and stress over the last few years too, job related and not job related as well, for the many hats folks are wearing inside and outside of the office. One study found that 47% of employees reported their stress was higher than anything they'd experienced in their career, but only 37% agreed that their organization really understood what they needed, both in their personal lives and with their families. How are you kind of supporting the full lives of employees? I know you shared a couple examples around just the programs that are available and how you're thinking intentionally about it, but definitely wanted to ask.
Yeah, I think the thing that we did that I'm really proud of is we got in front of our employees in an empathetic way. We said, go do you, take the time you need. And so I think, again, you can give time off, and we did Apptio exhale days where we shut down the company for a day and said, everyone go breathe together, because you actually have to do that. Otherwise, people are going to work on their days off anyway. So we did Apptio exhale days. We told people to take their vacation, but we communicate. I mean, the leaders, the executives, the CEO was in front of the company once a week saying, take care of you, take care of your family. So I think the empathy that was shown during this time, and just the patience and recognizing that productivity is going to take a hit when things in the world outside of our control are happening. Same thing with the war in Ukraine. We had employees in Belarus, right? They're directly impacted with what's going on. And so we recognized that there was going to be a loss of productivity because the world is throwing things at us. And the company just really supported that. I think the other thing is we got to our manager community a lot during the last couple of years, because boy, they have a hard job. They have a hard job because they have to take care of their teams. They have to take care of themselves. So we talked a lot about, how do you recognize burnout in your employees? We equip them with ways to deal with burnout. So it was really about communication, and how do you engage and equip? We were sending emails out with, whether it was e-mindful classes or class, or get up and walk away from your desk, and, just reminders of how people needed to put on their own oxygen mask so that they could take care of their kids at home, or their spouse, or their parents, or just dealing with the emotional impact of what we've gone through the last couple of years.
Yeah, those reminders, that effective communication, modeling that behavior, especially from senior leadership, from the team, is really important. Yeah. Investing in managers, you may not talk to the CEO or the chief people officer every day, but you're talking and working with your manager a lot throughout your time at the organization too. We know that a lot of folks, like you mentioned too, have been really looking at their strategy, their people strategy over the last few years and saying, okay, what's working, what's not, business as usual is out the window. You told me about the example of how remote employees really felt like they were more part of the company, which is really great. Can you tell me about how you and your team have redesigned a system, process, or policy initiative to be more equitable recently as well?
Yeah. I think, listen, I think the word I would use to explain what we've done is just intention. We have been really intentional about bringing in more diverse leadership into the company. We have been more intentional about having really open conversations everywhere from, social injustice to menopause in the workplace, to how do you talk to your kids about shootings. And so we've created this, I think, this culture of, we've always had it. Transparency is one of our core values. We've always had a culture of transparency. I think over the last few years, it has just blossomed. And so we've created a space for the conversations to happen. We've created this space for people to talk about, like, what is actually allyship, and how can I be in the arena with you, versus just sitting over and saying, yeah, I'm an ally, but what does that actually mean? So I think just being really intentional about bringing in diverse talent, being really intentional about creating that space where people feel comfortable having open dialogue, and not just in their small ERG groups. They can do that, but also at the company level. We do these sessions where our CEO gets up, he has office hours every month, and it literally is any question you want to ask, you can ask it in that space. And that might be a business question, but it could also be about, What is Apptio doing about social injustice? What is Apptio doing about COVID response? So again, we've created this really transparent environment that we're really, really proud of, but that has allowed for more open conversations. Again, we created ERGs, and that's really been awesome. We're having conversations about how do we bring pay transparency to the table. That's not something that's easy to do, but we're working in that direction because we know it's the right thing to do. And again, then it allows us to open up the dialogue to make sure that we have an equitable process across the board.
Absolutely. Creating the space and really investing in resources, programs, ERGs as well for folks to lean into conversations, hard conversations, educational, and just connecting with one another as well through storytelling and just with your team too. We know that there is research that says when you feel connected to your team, you are doing, you enjoy your work better, the end product is better, and it's a win-win for everybody. And I would say the same for when your manager and the company and team is invested in your growth as an individual too as well. What are the ways that you're investing in the growth, upskilling, or professional development of Apptians?
Yeah, this is a big focus for us. So we have our program Apptio Growth. And this is all when we talked earlier about quantitative data and qualitative data and how does that help build your strategy. The programs that we're now putting in place around growing people and developing people and really filling the souls of people really comes from these kind of conversations. So we did a survey and we have a lot of data points that tells us people that leave the company are leaving because they want to grow their careers. They don't feel like they have growth here. And so we've spent a lot of time making sure we have the foundational stuff right. Do we have job profiles? Do we have career ladders? All the things that you fundamentally need to have so that people have visibility to how they can grow their. And then we've put some big programs in place. We have an onboarding program for people that are newer in their careers. How do they assimilate into a corporate environment? We call that fast track. In 2 weeks, we're getting ready to launch a manager excellence new manager journey. So new managers that are either promoted or join Apptio go on a 9 to 12 month journey around how to have effective one-on-ones and coaching, all just that work that you need to have and to grow. So we've created these journeys. We're going to create more of those. We're going to create a journey for how do we get our managers to be great managers for people who want to be managers. Most of the company has access to Udemy licenses. So we've invested in that. But I've also talked a lot to the company about, okay, great, we have these awesome programs in place and I'm really proud of the work we've done. Now we got to take the conversation out of the macro and put it in the micro, right? It's nuance. What is important to me as an employee is different that is important to another employee. What does grow actually mean to the individual, right? And managers need to take that conversation and really roll up their sleeves with their employee to figure out what is their passion, what is their growth plan. And so that's the next journey is really getting into those nuances and micros. And then we got to do something about it, right? We've got a phenomenal, again, really amazing mentorship programs and leadership development programs and manager development programs, but really getting into the individual is the next big movement for us here.
Absolutely. And you're right. Not everybody has the same goals of wanting to be, the chief revenue officer, the chief people officer, or you want to continue being an individual contributor or try being a manager. And how do you work together and have those conversations, ask curiosity-based questions, and really, again, effectively talk about kind of goals and how you can get there together too. I know we've been talking a lot about kind of examples of what you've done with the people strategy at Apptio and like what's working and all the innovation that's happening. So not necessarily at Apptio, but out in the world, what you're seeing. Are there any common mistakes or cautionary tales you're seeing folks making in their people strategy as well?
Yeah, I won't pretend to really know what people are doing in their different strategies, but I would say the biggest mistake we've made for sure, and I think that probably gets made, is not listening to the employee. I tell my HR team all the time, y'all are looking at it through your HR lens. look at it through a different lens. Or I tell the executive team, y'all are looking at it through an executive lens. You got to look at it through a lens of somebody who still looks at their paycheck every day. Like, it's really paying attention to what the employees want. It's not listening to just the noisiest. It's really understanding how you build programs that kind of fit 80% of the population, and then you deal with the exceptions as just that, exceptions. But it's really spending time and having a good pulse on what your employees want and need. And that is an ever-changing thing. So you constantly have to be doing that. And I think that's the mistake a lot of times that I see is like, why are you doing this thing? It doesn't matter to the employees. So
Absolutely. And also kind of what lens am I looking at this through as well? I think that's a good question to ask yourself, and kind of the positionality within the organization, or what is the end goal here. And you're right, you can't kind of set it and forget it in terms of, well, this is what employees said they wanted kind of a year ago or like 2 years ago. It's like consistently asking, setting up kind of ways in a company culture where people feel like they can give that feedback as well. In this work in human resources, people, what is one of your, I'm sure you have many, but proudest moments?
Yeah, listen, I think how we responded to COVID is really, I'm super proud of it. I am proud of every individual at this company, the tenacity and the grit that they showed, the compassion for each other. I mean, Apptio is just a special place with really, really special people. And I know I'm totally biased, but the way that we came together as a community, as a family, as a company, to really rally around each other and support each other. And when our coworkers were gone because they were dealing with COVID, or, again, whatever they were going through on their journey, the team just rallied around each other. I think the level of communication, that level of empathy, we just did a really, really good job. And our employees, we've asked the question, how did we do? And that has been consistent, is they're really, really happy with the response that we took, and the flexibility that we took, and the support that we gave during that time.
Yeah, I think that is a great kind of answer, demonstrating strength and agility and resilience as well, and kind of the feedback you're getting from the team. Missy, is there anything that I didn't ask throughout our conversation that you want to share with folks who are listening, or underscoring any kind of key insights that you hope people bring with them after hearing our conversation?
Yeah, I think that I would say the key insights for me is, that compassion, that empathy, that just caring of people, like leading with kindness and support. I mean, we still have to run a business, right? And we still have business outcomes that we have to drive. But I truly believe that more engaged employees are more productive and will give us better business outcomes. And so I think, that is a key thing. And I would just say to anyone who's looking to build their career, be vocal about it. Really talk to your manager about what you want and what you need, and don't suffer in silence because you don't think that there's that possibility, because I think anything's possible.
Yeah, someone once told me that you are your biggest advocate. You can have great mentors, sponsors, but nobody's gonna care as much about your career than you. So you have to really do digging, and then effectively kind of communicate that, share, and be vocal about that as well. Missy, thank you so much for being on Reimagining Company Culture this afternoon.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Of course. And as a reminder for folks who are listening, at AllVoices, we really believe in employees and employers being seen, heard, and understood. And know it's a requirement for really the business to succeed overall. Have a great rest of your day, everyone.